I should turn this into a terrarium.
Yep, that's right. Today we're building a Zelda themed terrarium to celebrate the release of the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Before we can get started designing this terrarium, we first have to build the tank itself. To do so, I'm gonna use these scrap pieces of glass. These used to make up the aquarium of my Blue Dream shrimp, but I recently disassembled the tank. I'm also going to convert it to an upright position. And to do that I need to cut a few more pieces of glass. Luckily I had a few of these broken planes of glass laying around for projects like this. So I took some measurements, scored a line with my glass cutter, and snapped a piece over the edge of my workbench. I used to get really nervous while cutting glass and as a result end up with uneven pieces. However, it's not as hard as you might think, and the trick really is to just have confidence. Next I wet down a piece of 120 grit sandpaper and sanded the edges of the newly cut pieces of glass. I then cleaned off all the glass pieces with some isopropyl alcohol and laid them out on my workbench. I've never siliconed an entire tank together like this, but since Tears of the Kingdom is all about gluing random stuff together, I figured this might be the perfect build to give it a try. But before I do, I taped off all the edges of glass to achieve a cleaner bead of silicone. Speaking of silicone, I'm going to use Auto Seal S28. I'm applying a thick bead of this stuff along all the pieces and then taping them together. Next I'm applying another bead along the inside, which I then smoothed out using my finger. Next I applied more silicone to the top, which actually will be the front, and then laid the pieces I just cut on top. I smoothed out the silicone and then removed all the tape on the inside of the tank. As you can see, I spilled a little bit of silicone, but we'll clean it up later. First we're going to let this cure for 24 hours. Alright, it's cleanup time.
And all of that brings us up to this point. I think it looks really cool. There are a few inconsistencies here and there, but given the fact it's the first time I'm building something like this from scratch, I think it turned out really well. However, the looks are pretty much meaningless if it doesn't hold water, so let's do a little test to see if it does.
A few hours later I did a little inspection and it turns out it holds water.
Great success.
Next I took some measurements and cut yet another piece of glass. This last piece will become the door. Let's set it aside for now and instead focus on these rocks. These are Pagoda rocks. They are really cool looking rocks with great texture. But more importantly, I found this rock that kind of looks like the rock from the cover. Therefore I had to include it into this build since it's pretty much the only thing visible on the cover. Next I began playing around with the placement of these rocks. I originally planned to have 3 floating rocks, but seeing them in the tank I think it's a bit crowded. So I opted for 2 rocks instead. These were silicone directly to the glass. I used pieces of wood and masking tape to hold the stones in place while the silicone cured. Now let's hope this will be strong enough. The next day I didn't fully trust the silicone yet, but I really wanted to continue. So I turned the structure upright and placed a piece of XPS foam in the bottom, in case one of the rocks decides to fall off. Next I took a billion measurements and slowly built up the trim around the tank. The main reason for adding the trim is so we can add hinges later on to create a functioning door. An added bonus of adding trim is that it looks really cool. I also made this top off camera to house the lights later on. For now, it just really looks like a Minecraft helmet. A bit of sanding later and this piece was ready for a stain. I usually use this really dark stain from IKEA, but I'm feeling a little experimental today. So I'm first going to stain this test piece using this stuff. Yeah, never mind, this stuff is ugly. So I stained the terrarium using my trusty IKEA stain. And once it dried, I also applied a coat of varnish off camera. Next I taped off our wooden Minecraft helmet and took it outside. Where I spray painted the inside white. The light will help direct any light down into the terrarium. And while that's drying, we can take the terrarium inside. We're almost ready to design the inside of this thing, but before we do, I want to add a foam mat underneath this bad boy. This will help level out any inconsistencies between the bottom of the terrarium and the surface of the table. And now we can finally start designing the inside of this thing. Let's add some mica to act as a drainage layer. Oh, it's not that much. We'll just add some of these small pebbles. It's still not a whole lot, but it's just enough to make this work. Next I'm adding a piece of geotextile fabric to serve as a divider of sorts. On top of that I'm adding a layer of charcoal, and on top of that I'm adding a nice thick layer of substrate. Let's slope it up towards this corner. And also slightly towards here. Next I'm adding some damp sphagnum moss between the cracks of the back rock. I'm also adding some behind the rock as well as a little bit more substrate. This little lamp will serve as a temporary lamp on top of the tank. Okay, let's add some plants. I've been waiting for a very long time to use this mini palm tree. And I think this might be the perfect setup. Yep, that looks really cool. Now let's contrast that with this Opia Pogon Kyoto. Next, let's add some oak leaf creeping fig to the back island. I love to use this tiny vine. The leaves look so cool and add a lot of detail to any tank you use it in. Next, I decided I didn't really like to have all the palm trees grouped together, so I split them up. Now let's bring some life to this setup with some moss. I'm exclusively using this Hypno moss for this build since, well, I found a really good patch of it the other day. Look, I found a little millipede between the moss. He can live in our little Hyrule. Comment down below how we should name this guy. Uh-oh, cat inspection. With the blessing of my cat, I continued. I felt the landscape was a bit boring. so I decided to add the last pagoda rock right in the middle of it. Next I added a bunch of these tiny little Anubias Nana Petite. The landscape is starting to take shape, but let's take it to the next level with some seed pods. These two are the most Zelda-esque seed pods I have. They're kind of like mini houses. We should add a path. I started ripping out patches of moss until there was a nice little path all the way to the top seed pod. I then filled this path with play sand, but didn't really like the look that much. So I quickly covered it with aquarium gravel. This turned out much better. But I think this path needs another tiny little bit of Anubias right there. And the final ingredient will be these mini acorns I sprinkled throughout. I then brought the entire unit back to the shed for one final time, so I could carefully add the door. I then drilled a small hole on the top of the terrarium and installed this small LED light. The entire unit could then be assembled, brought inside, and finally a colony of springtails could be added. Thank you guys so much for watching. I had a ton of fun building this one and I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. Let me know in the comments what I should build next time, and if you're hungry for more content, I recommend you watch this video next. I'll see you there.